Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and today we're going to be talking about our favorite subject, blockchain. But more importantly, we're going to go a level deeper. We're going to talk about what's happening in gaming, entertainment, and esports in relation to the blockchain industry. We talked a lot just moments ago here on VCTV, in particular, what's happening in the industry, and called out a few notable highlights particular to today's episode. One was around NFTs. We saw over $100 million transacted in NFTs over the last 30 days, and almost $250 million in NFT transactions last year alone. So we've got more to talk about that. But when it comes to gaming, we're seeing more activity in the gaming space or leading towards it with someone like NBA Top Shot, built by Dapper Labs, starting to do massive amounts of revenue on in-game collectibles as well. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about that and what's happening in the esports world that seems to be continuing to thrive as more people are living their digital lives and digital economies in front of their computers every day. So with that, get ready. We've got an exciting group of investors from around the world who are going to be talking about this, either investing and or experts in the space. And also a big shout out to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you're liking what you hear, make sure you click subscribe, share the episode, and also check out the archive to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family as we bring together the best and the brightest from around the world to share with you their thoughts and insights on industries like today and other technologies and regions around the world. If you would like to be on a show as well, do reach out to the team and or myself. We'll find that right spot for you. Speaking of the team, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and also new for everybody as we are streaming everywhere. Make sure that if you have any questions, drop them into the comment section. I'll do my best to ask them in real time. If not, we will be on Clubhouse later today at 12 Pacific with the team and or myself, and you can ask your questions there as well. So let's go ahead and get started and introduce today's guest. James, first and foremost, welcome to the stage, the digital stage, the biggest of them all, to talk about what's happening in the sports and entertainment world. James, a little introduction and a little background, please.
Sure. No, thank you for having me. So James Santor, Director of Marketing at 76 Capital. So we focus on the sports tech industry and we're very early stage VC. So pre-seed to Series A, focusing on sports tech, which to us is esports, sports betting, and then general sports tech. So we're looking to find and invest in the companies that are going to disrupt the sports industry and build that future.
Wonderful. And I'm glad to have you and the 76 Capital team representing here today. You guys are doing great work in the space. Everyone, make sure you check them out along with James as well. Next up, Joel, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background for everybody, please.
Yeah, sure. Good to meet everybody. Thanks for inviting me again. I'm usually based in Hong Kong, but because of COVID, I've been based on the West Coast since March of last year. I've got a broad background in retail, consumer. The most relevant stuff related to this session today is I was one of the early people on DirecTV, and we grew DirecTV internationally, and with the first group, I think, to digitize broadcasting from analog to digital, from Sky B to DirecTV was quite a leap in terms of the number of programs people could watch. And a lot of the things people are grappling with today, we were grappling with 20 years ago. So that's number one. Number two, I have a partnership with an eSports platform. That's a retail platform that we're licensing around the world. And a lot of the issues we're grappling with, blockchain can certainly help with. And also we do licensing, and IP is a very critical issue for us in terms of how owners of IP can keep track of their royalty payments. So this is a session that I'm looking forward to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joel. And we're looking forward to it as well. And last but not least, Robbie, welcome back to the show as well. F1 Delta time, taking the racetrack by storm. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and Amico Brands, along with what you guys do as well.
Sure. Hi, I'm Robbie Young. I'm the CEO of Animoca Brands. We are a Hong Kong headquartered game developer specializing in blockchain games. And our focus for the last 3 years has been on NFTs, which are, the intersection of games and blockchain. And so one of the games that you're referring to, F1 Delta Time, is a good example because we work a lot with licensed IP, particularly in the area of sports, and create exciting blockchain game experiences where users can actually, have property rights for their own content. But I'm sure we'll get into that. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. And last but not least, yet again, surprise guest, ladies and gentlemen, the NFT king himself, Mr. Where Play Games, Noble. Welcome back to the show. Pleasure as always. A little intro, a little background for everyone.
Hi guys, this is Noble Dracone. I'm with Where Play Games. I look, I'm always excited to see Robbie on these panels because Animoca is one of our favorite brands, to be honest. They've inspired us in a lot of ways in how we're developing our own NFTs and how we're focusing on the ecosystem. About 4 years ago, we filed a patent converging augmented reality with merchandise and clothing. And as we've evolved, NFTs have played a significant part. I'm also the founder of Dracone Capital Partners, in which we make investments as well as assist up-and-coming startups with our partner M Accelerator to find the capital they need to grow in both the NFT space as well as the blockchain space.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Again, excited to have everyone on today's show. This is a very important topic. As I mentioned, we've seen a ton of activity in these spaces traditionally, and now moving into the digital economy, we're seeing more digital activity than we ever have expected. Noble, just before you joined, I had mentioned that over the last 30 days, we've seen $100 million and growing in transactions around the NFT space that relate very heavily to sports and entertainment. And as compared to 2020, we only saw 250 million only. Again, I'm excited to see where this year ends up. In the eSports space, we're starting to see more activity as well, higher numbers in terms of viewership, more activity in general, more sales from that as well. And then in the entertainment space has completely changed. We looked at entertainment as in-person for many reasons in 2020. Now here in 2021, everything is digital for the various reasons. But how has that changed sports? How has that changed things like esports? And also, how has that created the rise of games like F1 Delta Time and others as well? James, want to kick it off with you is just kind of getting a lay of the land. I mean, at 76 Capital, you guys focus on a lot of different areas around sports and entertainment. But in general, what are you seeing change in these industries, including esports, here in 2021?
Yeah, I think 2020 was obviously a major year for the esports industry and the sports betting industry, honestly. And I think you've kind of seen that massive growth, and it's accepted on a wider scale as far as esports being one of those legitimate, sports. I think personally, I think in the next 5 years, we'll consider it one of those top 4, top 5 sports right there, along with like the MLS going into the traditional 4. So I think now it's kind of commonly accepted. There's a wider range of people viewing it, playing, and for esports specifically, there's so much opportunity from the tech side to continue to innovate, especially in this virtual world we live in. One of our companies is Nerd Street Gamers, and they focus mostly on the brick and mortar side of things, where they provided accessibility, the top gaming PCs, which is awesome. Pandemic happens, people can't go and use those top gaming PCs. People can't go and use that in person. So for them, they switched to the digital side, digital tournament hosting, streaming, really kind of becoming that provider for everything that you need to be able to game at a high level competitively during a virtual world. So for us, we're trying to see that type of model where things are continuing to grow and evolve. And it's not necessarily following the traditional sports sense. It's really following a combination of sports, entertainment, technology, and that's going to really help esports grow. And from blockchain, there's so much opportunity in the sense that everything that's inside of a game, whether it be a skin, whether it be a character, whatever you may want to find out, you can digitize that and then sell that through blockchain, which I think is something we've seen a lot from the deal side of companies that are trying to really monetize the crypto side, monetize the ability to own the different things within a game, enhance the in-game experience, and then kind of create that bigger virtual world in the long run. So this is going to be a huge year for esports, and I suspect the next 5 years will continue that rapid growth. And I'm really excited to see where this industry is going.
Love it. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for esports in that next 5 years? I mean, betting is one, so I'll throw that out there, but beyond betting, maybe what do you see as some of the biggest opportunity?
Yeah, no, I definitely want to touch on betting too, because there's a lot on that. But I really think the data and analytics side, I think if we're looking from that team model and then the organization model, I think right now it's kind of there's a lot of moving parts. It's a very fragmented sport. So I think that there's an opportunity to have more advanced analytics, but also from the payment provider side, whether it's trying to pay the players, trying to pay the teams, everything, every league, every team, it's all so fragmented that there's not really any organization. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to modernize that, to make it more efficient. And I think, again, blockchain could play a huge part of that because it is a more secure, easy to use. You kind of know all the different pieces. And it's really exciting. And on the sports betting side, do you want me to go on that yet, or do you want to wait?
We'll wait. We'll hold.
Okay,
because
I'm excited about that.
I can see. Yeah, I see everyone else just kind of frothing about wanting to talk about it. So we'll come back to sports betting. Thank you very much, James. Noble, same question to you. I mean, what do you see kind of happening in this space, coming from both traditional into now digital games and playing in the NFT space? What have you seen happen here in 2021?
You know, it's been super exciting to just see the idea of both the metaverse concept becoming really stabilized and people really focusing on that there's an opportunity to generate money off of just owning property in NFTs. You know, I've said it before that there's going to be a convergence in two areas. Number one, that the new gig economy is going to be gaming, where you don't have to be an esports aficionado in order to play games, collect money, collect tokens. And then the next phase of that is then finding where you stake those. And that's really the big DeFi opportunity. You know, each NFT is unique and special in and of itself. And there has to be an unlocking of value for these items. So it is great that last year was 250 million. It's great that already it's over 100 million. But now you have all this locked in value. And so what we're seeing on that front is that people are starting to look at DeFi solutions so that people can really benefit from the NFTs beyond just things that look pretty or beautiful. We're also finding cutting edge opportunities to bring musicians into the space. You know, musicians, you know, we all love music, we all listen to music, but the way the system is now in music is fairly broken. You know, you have someone like Pharrell, his song streams 43 million times, gets a $12,000 check. There's some kind of incongruity in what's happening. And so we've been talking and developing opportunities and really looking at the NFT space to create new outlier profit centers for more people in the music industry. So there's a lot of fun things that are happening, and there's this idea of securitizing NFTs and DeFiing NFTs is really a hyper exciting space. Plus, we're seeing all different types of protocols. You know, you've got Dapper Labs with Flow. You've got EOS now starting to transition not on Wax only, but people are starting to build NFT opportunities on EOS. You have Ethereum still expanding with OpenSea, and so the whole space is just ripe for growth and expansion, particularly when people are trying to do something with the profits they made. And you know, we've seen it throughout history. When people make outlier returns and outlier profits, the next space that starts to get a boom is the arts. And this is what the NFT space is starting to do. The arts are really benefiting from this.
Yeah, and you mentioned a few blockchains that are starting to rise, and we saw some announcements recently from Wax and some new IP moving over to that space as well. So excited to see that. And Robbie, I want to come to you next. You're already ready. I can see it. So I want to come to you next on a similar question, but anything to add on to Noble's point, the similar question from your view, what are you seeing happening in these spaces here in 2021?
Sure. I think from our perspective, we're seeing, I think it's exciting because we're starting to see a little bit more interest from people who are not the sort of ultra early adopters, just ordinary early adopters, if you will. So I think, you know, it's always good to have an overall bull market in cryptocurrencies and things like that because it draws attention to the segment and I think helps us also to get more mainstream media attention. But mainly, it's the success of specific projects in the field, like NBA Top Shot that you mentioned from Dapper, or the Sandbox, and F1 Delta Time that we have, Axie Infinity, games where there are people who are joining in and playing and getting new experiences that they didn't get in other games before. And particularly, a lot of people are, they're making money. And when there are opportunities to make money, it draws people in. And it brings in attention and investment into a sector to help it grow, so that we can then expand the experiences beyond simply making money, but also creating really fun entertainment products too. So I think, these last 8 weeks have been incredible. I mean, if you look at all of the excitement around NFT art, for example, NFT art was a segment that 6 months ago barely existed outside, probably a number of collectors that was in the hundreds. And now, I looked on Clubhouse yesterday. There was a talk about the upcoming Christie's sale of people's work at Art Basel in Switzerland, which is going to be the first real mainstream debut of an NFT artwork in a traditional auction format. And there were over 2,000 people listening to a Clubhouse talk, and I didn't even know that there were that many people, on Clubhouse, frankly. So that's amazing, and that's something that I think is the direct result of this sort of perfect storm right now of very high crypto prices. So people are constantly, crypto is on people's radar, not just crypto people's radar. And then what's new in crypto? Well, what's new in crypto is people are selling art for millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden, the traditional art world looks at that and says, well, once you can sell a work for over $1 million, we're interested now. Who are these artists? Let's get behind them. Let's figure out how we put them in galleries, whether that's, in a virtual metaverse or however we're going to represent this artwork. But there's money to be made, so we're going to help promote it. And so that's what's happening now. And I think that's great, because whether people's interest is in just making money or otherwise, the fact that there's a profit motive there will attract more investment to the sector and help us grow the sector.
Absolutely. We also had news today, a great point, Robbie. We had a Spider-Man drawing, as I'm scrolling across the screen right now, that sold for $25,000. So about 12.75 ETH earlier today as well. So the art spaces continue to grow. We saw sales this weekend for $700,000 by Fuchsilicious. Congratulations again to he and his team, but very exciting. And I've got a follow-up question, but before I do, Joel, I want to come to you next and hear what your thoughts are on this space from the entertainment and esports space that you focus on, and what's really happening here in 2021 from your view.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what James and Noble said, because they've covered pretty much what I was going to talk about. But a large part of our business is working with property developers, and that's why esports, physical assets, are where we're focusing on. At the end of the day, lots of young people like to congregate outside and play against each other and see each other and have a drink and talk. And one of our missions is trying to save a lot of the property developers that are all over Asia, that are all looking for non-lifestyle stuff. And they've already they have too much F&B, and so they're looking for entertainment issues, and esports is one of them. So that's number one. So people will still, once COVID is over, they'll still want to go out and have fun together and play against each other, and that's the part that we're in. Secondly, having come from a entertainment background, music that was mentioned by Noble is really critical, because most people are not getting anywhere near what they should be getting in royalties. And so I think he nailed that point, that's people are playing music all over the place in restaurants and elsewhere. And they have police that go around, and then when they find you playing something, they charge you for the playing of music. And then the third thing is fraud. One of the things that we grappled with from DirecTV on was fraud, was fooling around with the IRD boxes. And fraud is a massive issue, and blockchain can do a lot to reduce, not get rid of, but reduce fraud in the payment space. And that's an area that so many people are concerned about. We were concerned about that 20 years ago when people were downloading a movie and paying for it on DirecTV. The fraud was enormous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, and we also had Nintendo make some big announcements yesterday of new games for the Switch, and also moving towards this online marketplace that they're going to be releasing. So I think there's going to be a very interesting dynamic to, yes, people want to be together and be outside playing, but also this digital economy that we're moving into, and Noble and others have touched on it. I mean, this isn't going away. We have entered and are in living, breathing in the digital economy going forward, and not something we're going to go back to. Also, a quick shout out to Howard. I see you tuning in and sending us messages. So Howard, if you do have a question, send me one on Twitter and I'll make sure it gets asked as well. He was just looking for this conversation. So there we go. Perfect timing. So great mentioned, Joel. And James, coming back to you. Sports, gambling, betting, entertainment, esports. Talk to us about where this industry has come from and is going to go here in 2020, because more states in the United States now have the ability to do sports betting. Esports betting is starting to thrive as the games get more intense, and we also see more activity around that. Where does the industry go in your view?
Sure. Yeah, no, again, this is something I'm excited about because it does touch on the esports side too. But 25 states right now have legalized, and 20 have operational sports betting. So 5 are still waiting to have the operational. But in 2.5 years, half the country is legalized sports betting. So I think it's not a trend. I think it's something that you're going to see. It's a legitimate opportunity for states to increase revenue and do so in a way that, look, sports betting happens whether it's legalized or not, right? This is a way to regulate that, but also it's safer because there's no credit. So anybody betting legally is not betting money they don't have. So a lot of people are worried about the ethical perspective of it, but really this is a way to safeguard something that's already happening. So from that perspective, I think that's a message that really needs to probably get out there more, because I think there's still such a negative connotation associated with sports betting sometimes. So, I think there's so much opportunity, so much good that comes from the continued growth and legalization of this. Now, the biggest thing that I've seen in the industry, and we've seen at 76, is the convergence of sports betting and media, and how do those two combine to integrate the experience for the fan. Because I think, and again, this is something that the pandemic has been awful, but for sports betting specifically, it became something that was a tool for leagues and teams to use for fan engagement that they may have not really thought about or may have looked down upon before. I always share this story. In 2019, I was at a meeting with one of the major leagues in Vegas. They told us that they were not interested, their fans were not interested in sports betting content. 2 years later, that league had nonstop sports betting content on every single broadcast. It's all they talk about. The lines are everywhere. So you see in 2 years, less than 2 years, that tone has switched. So now there's this opportunity to really take that and give the fan what they want, cater it to the different audiences, and do it in an intriguing and unique way. So I think we're starting to see this growth, especially in the media space. I mean, we saw Barstool and Penn National. I mean, that was a massive deal, $450 million. And now for my demographic, which is really, the 18 to 35, Barstool Sportsbook is dominating in Pennsylvania, and it's unbelievable. So sports betting is here to stay, and it's going to continue to grow. And then on the esports side, and then I'll shut up, I promise. The esports side is so special on sports betting because if you think about traditional sports and that schedule, you're limited to your traditional hours. So probably, if you're lucky, 3 p.m. ET to maybe midnight for the West Coast games. So there's a huge opportunity in that time when there's no games on for people that still want to bet and want to bet on something that's fun and interesting to watch. And that's esports. There's global esports competitions going on. You can turn on Twitch, any other channel or website, and you can watch an esports event and bet on that at any time of the day. So I think that in itself is a huge opportunity. I think a big piece of the growth of esports betting is, again, the safety and regulation, as is the concern with a lot of people. You're betting on, a lot of times, people under the age of 21. So that's something that I think is an issue. But it's also, the odds makers aren't that aware of what they're making the odds for. So if you're putting out odds for a Counter-Strike game, every time I see it right now, both teams are minus 110. Now, I'm not going to act like I know every single Counter-Strike player, team, all that, but there's got to be a disparity between the talent on both teams, and there's got to be a clear favorite. But right now, the odds that are being provided are not like that. So I think that's why you see a lot of books or legal books in the US that are slowly putting out esports because they can lose money if they're not putting out the right odds. So I think there's a huge opportunity for esports to really become a bettor's favorite. So
I couldn't agree more, but I want to come to Noble on this because he's been shaking his head left, right, up, down this entire time. So, Noble, since your head is on a game controller swivel over there, up, down, left, right, little pun. Give us anything else to add on to James's point.
No, the esports space, we've been kind of in and out of it for the last 2.5 years, and it's great that the betting has opened up. There's some core issues, the fact that the best players in most esports events don't ever exceed 21, 22, and so it's one of those things where the people betting on them, and when you start pulling into that space, they can't even participate in generating money in the games that they're playing, and this is. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be dealt with, but that also doesn't change the fact that it's a $1 billion industry that's happened solely because of pre-NFT skins. People have been trading avatars, skins, the like, and using those as betting tools from the beginning. And so it has to be brought above ground. I think the idea that people bet also needs to be changed. I think the age of 21, particularly if you're talking esports, probably has to be changed to 18 maybe. There's all these things that need to really help mature this industry. But the biggest thing that I believe that's matured the industry, the idea of just having non-fungible tokens, the ability to take these assets that you're playing with in the game and owning them that you've earned and then taking them other places. Right now, if anybody kind of watches how the teams are sponsored and how things are divvied up, it's not always fair among each player on what they get, how they get, and how the sponsors kind of support them. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and those kids who are spending hundreds of hours deferring college, deferring careers to become successful in that industry, are really not earning anything until they get to the tournaments. And the idea that they can actually earn NFTs in game is really one of, I think, the best changes in all of this, that NFTs become insinuated as an asset tool so they can actually show time for value. And that's what's been lacking in all of gaming. As gamers, we've been making all these companies, Tencent, hundreds of millions of dollars. We've been making, everybody billionaires off of our activity and our content. And then when they want to flip the switch, it all goes away at any moment. It just disappears, and there's no real value for your time. And so I think that the biggest has yet to come in non-fungible tokens. I think they play a significant component when it comes to esports, particularly in being able to give these kids something of value. Right now, the millennials are doing nothing but renting their whole lives. They rent, cars, they rent places to stay, they rent media and content. And the idea of NFT is that in a big way.
Yeah, and one of the other things that was missing that we're now starting to see as well is that on-off infrastructure, right? So those on-off ramps as well. So you've generated something in-game, now do something tangible with it, right? And that's where the NFT space is. So Robbie, I want to come to you. Anything to add on to Noble's points, but then I do have a follow-up question for you as well. But anything to add to Noble?
Sure. I think the property rights part is really key. Noble's really hitting the nail on the head with the play to earn side, and that's something that many games out in the market have been focused on. I think the best story of that actually is from Axie Infinity, which is developed in Southeast Asia. And there are, tons of players on Axie Infinity now in the Philippines who are basically grinding, or in this case, to use a blockchain example, they're mining, because their behavior and activity in the game is generating tokens, and they can then sell those tokens. And in an economy like the one they live in, that's actually a profitable trade for them on their time, because the cost of living is relatively low where they are, and the amount of money they can earn from playing in the game actually allows them to make a living by playing games. And I think that's really interesting. And fundamentally, it all comes back to the fact that the NFTs are giving property rights to people. So once you have rights, then this spawns a whole host of other industries. Because when you think about property rights in the real world, what does that mean? That means you have a title. So you have title deed companies, mortgage companies, you have, financing companies. There are all kinds of ancillary industries that can grow up then as a result of having these property rights. So, as Noble was saying in the intro at the beginning, now that you have NFTs, well, then What do you do with the NFTs? You can trade them, you can stake them, you can get, you can loan, you can have them collateralized. There are all kinds of other services as a result. So you're basically building an entire ecosystem, and that's very exciting.
It is, and that's actually real quick before my follow-up, Joel, anything to add on that, since you also focus a lot on the IP side as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add because these are three great panelists, and the only thing I'm going to add is one sentence. It levels the playing field at the end of the day. And the thing that blew me away is I can go to Indonesia on the street and I can see merchants, conducting business just with smartphones, with complete cashless payments. And the United States, I see people whip up a credit card and pay. So I think in places whether it's the Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, or whatever, what Robbie said is exactly right. People can monetize their activities. And the United States is going to be a long time before they even get to Indonesia levels of digitizing all these little stores all over the place. So that obviously relates to individuals that can actually earn a living doing this kind of thing.
Yes, and for all the people out there complaining about gas fees on Ethereum, don't forget, you pay Visa and MasterCard a lot of money.
Exactly.
It's just not as transparent. Yeah, that's one thing. It's like, oh, I bought this, I bought this piece of art. I bought this T-shirt. You don't know that you pay the transaction fee as a part of that.
Kyle, right? The only thing I'll add is the reason we don't really have cashless payments in the U.S. is because of the banking industry and the government. So what are they going to do? Banks do not want to lose their 2.5%, on transactions. So I think one of the key issues is going to be this battle between the entire banking industry and the fact they want a piece of this stuff, or as much of it as they can get. I don't think MasterCard is sitting there ignoring it.
No, and I'm pretty sure they're figuring this out very quickly. I mean, we've got the one I'm a little nervous about is American Express, to be honest with you, if we're being very honest. American Express has been very quiet, very behind the scenes, looking at future forward technology. They've made a few investments in the blockchain space around it, but Visa and MasterCard have really put themselves out there in an aggressive way from an infrastructure standpoint and then also a consumer standpoint. So talking about things like we are today here around sports and entertainment and NFTs. So it'll be interesting to see where the payment processors go, because that is a big piece of this, right? When you go buy an NFT for $10, for instance, or $100,000, there are fees that are attached to that, and you need to pay those. But to Robbie's point, you also pay a transaction fee on anything you buy. You just may not be aware of it. And in some cases, that's why merchants push away from certain payment processors, like those who charge high fees. I'll leave their names out, but we can all figure out who they are because of the high fee and the high transaction. So switching back, Robbie, a question. NFTs. Awesome. Outstanding. Love them. $100 million. We've seen $70 million and sometimes within 24 hours of transactions. When do we take that from a digital collectible, a moment, into a game and actually do something with them more than just collect? And not to take anything away from the industry, because it's amazing, but what's that next step? How do we get to that next step of actually gaming and interacting?
Sure. So let me actually not talk about NBA Top Shot, but I'll talk about F1 Delta Time, which is not just a blatant plug for our game, but mainly because I know it better.
And I have it's our game. So I will take credit. I would like to know for F1 Delta Time, how do we go from NFTs to gaming? There you go.
So the idea behind when we decided how to create the in-game economy of F1 Delta Time, the idea was there were going to be different tiers of content based upon rarity, because we knew that the early adopters in the NFT space are collectors. These are the people who are, we're all early. We want to have cool stuff. I mean, the reason that you can buy, ridiculously expensive CryptoPunks is because they're exceedingly rare, and within a certain group of people, there's a cachet to owning one. And I saw a great post by somebody who said it's just like wearing a Rolex or having some other luxury good. For a certain cognoscenti, they're like, man, you've got a CryptoPunk? Cool. And that is worth something to somebody, right? That street cred. So for F1 Delta Time, what we did was we created super rare content. We created sort of different tiers all the way down to, common content, which is widely available and very low priced, because we want to have something that appeals to everybody. And so collectors can come and collect, Lewis Hamilton's season-winning 2019 car, of which there are only, maybe half a dozen pieces available, just like a limited edition artwork, or they can have, the regular common level car that has different attributes in the game. And so the more collectible one that maybe has a higher price tag will have different attributes. It will have slightly more horsepower or slightly stronger brakes, et cetera, because they are, at the end of the day, in-game assets to be used in the game to play. And so once you use them in the game, that gives them their utility beyond just simply collectability. So what we want is, we want for these to be widely used in the game, because people are like, okay, now there's a reason that I should have, the faster car or the one with better brakes. Not just because it's worth more on the secondary market, but because I can win. It's a faster car. I want the faster car. And by giving it that utility, we then add value to that collectible at the same time. So that's our thesis to the person who's interested and says, well, why would I pay $1,000 for something in a game? Well, because number one, you can win more games if you have a better piece of equipment. And number two, because there is a collectability aspect to it, you may get your money back. So you're not spending $1,000 in a game if you sell it for your $1,000 and leave, with what you came later, and you had a good experience while you were there. So that's the fundamental difference. Whereas if I go and play any other traditional game now, I play Fortnite and I spend $100 on skins, I've spent $100 on skins. I'll never see that $100 again. That's basically what I paid for my time cost of having fun in the game, and that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's also like buying equipment, right? You buy new cleats, you buy new anything to level up your gameplay in some way, shape, or form in the physical world. Why not do it in the digital world and in all fairness, in a cooler way? I mean, if I can go from buying cleats to buying, new tires or a new car, that's a more exciting and more engaging experience, right? You're more enthralled into the game.
So maybe if I can throw one more thing in, which is relevant then to James and Noble's discussion on esports. What we now have in F1 Delta time is we have people coming in as team owners who then basically invest in the content as team owners to then have players play those special cars and things, because as a team, they think they can make money. So they invest in the more rare, higher spec cars and drivers and kit. And then they have the team go and actually use the merchandise, because it's a business for them running a team. So it's actually directly analogous to actual Formula One racing, where somebody sponsors a team.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting. Noble, I see you. Give me 1 second. This is very interesting. I'm going to mute you because you got some echo, but this is very interesting because this takes team ownership for a team, a league, anything, from an elite group to almost anybody, if you can actually fractionize that. So now, to your point, it's not about just playing the game. It's not about just playing the game and having some type of ownership and growth or revenue. It's now also about that ownership model beyond, again, the pieces to the actual game. And again, back into that digital economy circle that we've been talking about. I mean, Robbie, this is exciting, but I gotta let Noble chime in. He's got a ton he's been holding back. Noble, I'm unmuting you. Are you ready? Well, you were.
I got something after too, Kyle.
All right, go for it. Noble, you unleashed.
Yeah. So no, because of Robbie's, and I'll say it completely full transparency, because of what they're doing over there at Animoca with both the F1 Delta and as well as what Axie Infinity has done. We've been focusing for the last 2 years really aggressively on making sure there's interactivity. So we have a game out called King of Quotes, in which we're allowing people to work with historical figures, and people can collect the historical figures, collect the quotes, and battle on blockchain with each other. And there's a cost, right? You burn the characters, you burn the quotes, and you have to collect. We're seeing people. We just created another game called Carousel World, where the characters are unicorns that are in AR as well as NFTs that you can collect, and we put that on the Wax blockchain. And now people can collect them, play them, dance with dance battles, and when they merge them, they lose the old unicorns and they receive new distinct unicorns. you're right. The NFTs have to function and operate. Right now, we're tracking Ecomi and Vivi on because they're also doing stuff with AR, where the NFTs are not just something that sits on your phone. They did a Ghostbusters release in which we bought some of the Ghostbusters. Great and exciting. I mean, I like the idea of the AR and the idea of the physical. So that's really been our push to get people to function and operate in a casual gaming space and play around with it, and then realize that there is no loss in trading and playing the cards in our games or playing with the unicorns or doing whatever they want, but as well as there's value in keeping them. So you've got to have an opportunity where people play. And like I said, I love what they're doing with F1 Delta, and it's been inspiring for how we're seeing how we're going about getting people to interact with the NFTs, because sitting with them is only so great. You still, unlike most collectibles, we lose them, we burn them, they disappear. There's no way to do that. You have to give some people something to do with them.
James, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going off what Robbie and Noble both said, the return on investment is huge. I mean, I think getting something back for your money that you can actually, again, it's a collectible. I think we've seen the trading card boom as well these last few months. It's that same way. So right now, if you buy that Fortnite skin and you can have it as an NFT, and it's your personal property, and then you can do whatever you want with that in the future, that's a huge opportunity, as opposed to just, an 8-year-old kid buying a skin that's going on their parents' credit card that is just there in the abyss now. So I think that return on investment is an easier sell for everybody. And I think as we saw kind of with the loot box issue, I guess it was a few years ago now with like EA Sports, I think it was maybe the original one, or EA. Again, that was a gambling of sorts. You're getting something that's really not, you don't know what you're getting. You're betting on, hey, I'm going to put $5 into this loot box, expecting a return on investment, which really is just you hope to get a legendary item, which is only good for that game. So again, that return on investment, where it's a longer term piece and an asset that you can actually have, is awesome. And the other thing that Robbie said that I thought was really interesting, we saw a lot of team investments and league investments in esports, especially 4 or 5 years ago when this really started booming. There's a lot of people that made other investments in teams and leagues that said, hey, this is a booming industry, let me invest right now. Problem is the valuations skyrocketed as soon as that happened, to places that honestly, for us as a VC, when we're looking at the life cycle of a fund, I don't think we're going to get a return that we're looking for in that 8 to 10 year cycle. So to have the opportunity to then go and, what Robbie was saying, with having a team owner, then kind of own that brand, own the collectibles, get players that can utilize those assets, then bring in revenue for that team. That's a really interesting way to own an esports team. And I think that's that's a way better model for long-term viabilities of owning esports teams than just the traditional, hey, let me go buy a team in a league with that we don't really have control over. So I think that's a huge opportunity for the future.
And if I can just interject, there are 2 other things that we've done specifically in F1 Delta time that I think complement what James was talking about, where if you own a car, whether it's a fancy car or just an ordinary car, you can stake it, to use a DeFi term. But by staking it, basically, to use the old world analogy, you're putting it in a rental pool, because you're giving it back to us, and then we rent it out to other players. So players who maybe can't afford a super rare car can afford to rent one, just like having a track day in the real world. And so they can play in the game with a really cool car that they couldn't afford because they're just paying per play, so to speak. The second part, which also speaks to the team ownership aspect, is we allow people to invest in tracks. So we've divided each Formula One track into 8 pieces, and people can invest in those tracks just like they invest in real estate in the metaverse. But the benefit of owning those tracks is you receive revenue based on the races that happen on those tracks. So you become a property owner in the game and benefit from the activity that happens in the game. So it's almost like we're kind of sharing in the ownership of the game as the developer ourselves, because at the end of the day, games these days are all about the community. And the more that we can involve the community in the benefits of the game as well, the more they'll support and help to grow that community.
Absolutely, which will probably be a trend going forward. I mean, this seems like we are moving into that community ownership model more and more as, again, we live this digital economy. Gentlemen, all great points around the board today. So much more we're going to be talking about in this industry. And wanted to come to each of you for a quick closing thought as to your bold prediction for the industry going forward this year, and then where everyone can find you. Robbie, since you just finished, let's start off with you. Bold prediction of where the industry of gaming and blockchain goes for the year. It's okay to plug F1 Delta Time. I'll give that back to you. And then also, where can everyone find you in the game online?
I think, first of all, you can always find me on Twitter and all the usual socials. And F1 Delta Time and our other games, you can just go to anymocabrands.com and find everything through there. My bold prediction is I think that NFTs and the blockchain game industry will grow by multiples this year. And I think that if we sit down here a year from now and have this discussion, we'll still consider ourselves early if we start a year from now. So I think that that makes this a very, very exciting proposition, because I think all we've done in the last 6 months, 12 months is prove that there's something here, but we're just getting started.
Love it. Thank you. Joel, same to you. Quick, bold prediction. Where can everyone find you online?
Right. You can find me on LinkedIn, Joel Silverstein, Hong Kong, and you'll find me. I mean, I think what James and Robbie and Noble are saying is absolutely true. It's since the end of time, since the beginning of time, people like to bet, people like to play games, and technology has just enabled them to do things differently than they did before. People like to go to F1. Now they can play F1 and do what they do. So behavior is not really any different than 100 years ago. I think it's just that technology has enabled so many things to do, and it's really up to the imagination of the people producing this IP and the growth in technology that, I think it's unlimited. The only other thing I'll say is, remember, we're in a zero interest rate, negative interest rate environment, people looking for yield. And when people look for yield in a zero rate environment, you get a massive bubble. Valuation. So I think valuations will come down and pop eventually when this mania is over for any asset, not just this.
Thank you, Joel. Noble, super quick prediction, and where can everyone find you along with Where Play Games online?
Yeah, whereplaygames.com. You can find us. You can find me directly at Noble Dracone on LinkedIn. Biggest prediction is that NFTs are going to supplant almost every other crypto, and it's not because they've got any kind of intrinsic value beyond the fact that it's a storehouse of value. People are desperately looking for that, and so they're going to actually be, now, while it's the tail wagging the dog, it will be the dog. I think that NFTs make the rest of the industry become relevant, because almost every single crypto is trying to find a use case, and this becomes an easy use case. That's all I've got to say on that. I think a year from now we're going to have a good time.
All right, I like it. James, close us out. Big bold prediction for 2021, and where can everyone find you along with 76 Capital Online?
Yeah. Bold prediction first. I think obviously we're very bullish on the growth of these industries right now, and I think there's so many practical applications for blockchain in esports, in sports betting, and entertainment in general, that as these industries continue to grow, blockchain is going to be a necessity in these industries, because we're going to need to be more efficient, more secure, and that's exactly what blockchain can do. So it's really trying to find the right way to bring those into these industries, and it's going to be a really bright future. So I'm really excited again for that conversation a year from now. Hopefully we can leave our houses and it's not a snowstorm outside. But my handle is anywhere at James Santor, and then at 76 Capital as well. Go follow the 76 Capital Leadership Series too. I'll give you that little plug.
Yeah, there you go. Can't wait for that. Looking forward to getting some cheesesteaks together as well, James.
Anytime.
Thank you all so much for the thoughts and insights. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in, and also for the comments and questions that came through as we do these episodes on VCTV. Make sure to drop those in either ahead of time or in real time. We'll do our best. If not, we're all online and would love to hear from you and continue the conversation. When you reach out, make sure to add context where you heard us and what you would like to continue the conversation about. And if you'd like to be on a show like today's, as either an investor or as an entrepreneur, reach out to the team and or myself. We'll find that right spot for you. Speaking of the team, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making VCTV possible every single day. Also, if you're available 12 p.m. Pacific today, we will be on Clubhouse to break down more around blockchain and gaming and all that's happening throughout the blockchain and crypto industry as well. Join us there, and we'll be back here with more VCTV in just a moment to speak about everything that's happening in the DeFi, or decentralized finance, and banking space. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me along with all of our awesome speakers today online. Again, make sure to add context when you reach out. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes with more VCTV. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.